This is my presentation on my EdTPA 3 lessons that I created. We'll be following the 10 points that are for the lesson. So first, some backgrounds for my lessons. The points I'm trying to make from my lessons is comparing and contrasting two different types of life cycles. Two different types of life cycles being the butterfly life cycle and the frog life cycle. And then for the first day, I'll be talking about the butterfly life cycle, and the second day, the frog life cycle, and the third day, we'll be comparing and contrasting, trying to find the similarities and the differences between the two life cycles. So first, I'm going to go through the 10 points that I have. So the first point is goals and objectives are clearly addressed. So my lessons for my goals and objectives are clearly stated at the beginning of each of my lessons. They will be either stated on the board or on some handout that I will give the students. Every single time they'll either be on the board or a handout. And then also they will be restated, usually by a student at the end of the day, to kind of like show them this is what you should have learned today, or this is what we went through today. For my second point, model subject-specific pedagogy. So pedagogy I kind of want to focus on is vocabulary. In biology, vocabulary is key. You're always building upon other vocabulary terms that you learned. So for instance, in this, 3 words that we're focusing on is pupa, larvae, and metamorphosis. In my lessons, one of my goals is that the students will know what these 3 words are. And then also another model that we use is the Venn diagram. So on the final day, I asked the students to figure out, ways to find similarities and differences. So the Venn diagram is an easy way to have, on one side of the Venn diagram, the butterfly, on the other side of the Venn diagram, the frog, and in the middle, the similarities that they have. And whatever is in the frog side or whatever is in the butterfly side, those would be the differences that they have. Step 3, deepens learning and links prior to learning to new concepts. So I start off my lessons, except for my first day. My first day is kind of different. But for my second day and my third day, I start off my lessons with some type of introduction video. That's kind of like the bare bones of what we're going to be learning today, kind of what they should have learned in the past. So the second day talks about the life cycle of a frog. So I bring in some, usually it's about a 5-minute long video, and talks about what we should be expected to learn today from life cycle of frog, and usually mostly terms that the students have learned in the past. And then also on the third day it talks about the differences or the life cycles of a frog and the life cycles of a butterfly and kind of comparing them. So not only are we building on things that we learned, in the past years, but also throughout the 3 days, we're building on things we have learned from day 1 and 2 into day 3. So for instance, on day 3, we're talking about the differences and the similarities that we learned between the frog and the butterfly. And we learned those on day 1, the butterfly, and day 2, the frog. So not only are we learning from things in the past, but things during the 3 days of the lesson. Step 4, connects to personal, cultural, or community assets. So I talked about this in the lessons we talk about it too, but in my task 2 I talk about it as well. So the need for marshes and other small ponds or small bodies of water in a given area in a neighborhood, because during these lessons we learn that this is the places that the frogs actually breed themselves. How the need for a body of water, some type of water, for the frogs to lay their eggs, so those eggs will hatch into tadpoles, and those tadpoles later on will become full adult frogs. And the need for frogs is that they keep the insects down. And then we also go into my first day. I have for my introduction a butterfly experiment. So in that butterfly experiment, we're actually having a live, at the time it will be a caterpillar in the classroom inside of some type of small enclosure, and the students will actually watch throughout the course of, it should take not more than a month, the course of a month, watching that caterpillar grow and then all of a sudden become a chrysalis, or from the term of vocab, a pupa, and then that pupa will become a beautiful butterfly that then, when it's all said and done, we are able to release into the neighborhood, the area around the school, and then the students could see that butterfly around the school for however long that it will live. So for step 5, Modifies the lesson for target students' needs. That's just the adaptations that we have for the lessons. So for my lessons, I like to have adaptations for each portion of the lesson. It's not needed every single time, but I like to do that just so I am thinking about my students all the time. So for instance, I have for my first introduction, when I have a video shown, to make sure I have the subtitles up so that my student who is hard of hearing can see and understand what is being said. Or when I'm explaining behavioral expectations, keeping in mind that I have a student with Tourette's, and that he knows that he has a safe space that he can go in the back of the classroom if the learning is becoming too much for him, or he just can't handle his Tourette's at this point and has to go into the back of the classroom so he can regain his composure, and then when he is ready to come back to the regular part of the classroom, he more than certainly can. Another portion that I have specifically for my ELL students, having my questions read aloud and then also on paper, and also having a lot of pictures, so then my ELL students not only are they reading it, they're also hearing it, they're also hearing their classmates say it, and they're also seeing pictures of what they should be understanding, what they should be learning. Step 6, questions promote higher level thinking. These would be my QAR questions. So a couple of my QAR questions I wrote down. For instance, higher level thinking would be, why do frogs lay their eggs near water? What is the need for this? Well, I kind of explained it before. The need for the water is that the eggs will hatch and become tadpoles, and those tadpoles need water to survive. Another question would be, or more of a thought question would be, why is complete metamorphosis better than incomplete metamorphosis? So in incomplete metamorphosis, it basically is like a mini adult, is what they called it. So that mini adult is eating the same type of food source as the other types of the animal, as the adult. Whereas in complete metamorphosis, it is a different type of food source. So for instance, both the butterfly and the frog is complete metamorphosis. The butterfly is eating different types of nectar and from flowers, whereas the caterpillar would be eating different types of plant matter. And for a frog, the tadpole is eating different types of plant matter or just organic matter found in water, whereas the frog is eating insects and also different types of plants as well. So there are different types of food sources for these animals. And then the final question I had written down was, why does parental care, specifically for the frog, affect the amount of eggs that are laid? Usually in the animal kingdom, if there's a large number of eggs that are laid, the parents will not have much to say in protecting those eggs. It is when there is a low amount of eggs laid, is that the parents will protect it. For instance, so a frog, if there's not that many eggs that the frog lays, they'll either swallow the eggs and keep them in their stomachs until they hatch, keep the eggs in their mouth until they hatch, or they will just protect them. They'll stand over them and stand watching them and just protect them the entire time. Step 7, my assessment, QAR, my independent practice. And then also I will have an exit ticket at the end of each day. So on that exit ticket, it will state students will write down 2 or 3 things that they learned today. And so I can try to remember, so students are always thinking about, hey, this is what I learned today, type of thing. Step 8, establishes rapport and respect among the students. So this is found in my behavioral expectations. My behavioral expectations are going to be clearly stated somewhere in the classroom. They should know what these expectations are. If they follow these expectations, they should they might become more lenient. Or another way that I establish rapport with the students is allowing the students to choose the way to read. So for instance, in my lesson plan, when we're talking about actually reading the text, I allow the students to, hey, I'll ask them, how do you want to read this today? They can either, read it popcorn style, they can call in their classmates, they can read, a paragraph at a time, anything like that, kind of give them a say-so in how they're going to learn their topics for the day. And then also going off that point, allowing the students to find different avenues to their learning. So I'm very lenient when it comes to actually, students can use the PowerPoints, they can use their own notes, they can use the book. I encourage them to use the internet to find different things that we might not have talked about in class or had the time to talk about in class. Just keep adding on to their learning. Step 9 models the strategy and engages in student learning. So going through the guided practices. So I have an example. I think it's on my day 1 guided practice. So talking about the two types of metamorphosis. So I have the students breaking off into different groups or by themselves, and then they will write down how do you describe incomplete metamorphosis, how do you describe complete metamorphosis, and then writing down 2 or 3 terms how you would describe them, and then the students will all come together as a class again, and then on the board they'll write down and debate why this is incomplete metamorphosis, why this is complete metamorphosis, why these two differ from each other, or why they are similar. And then finally, professionalism. So being ready for class. Being ready for class meaning that you are dressed for the job, that you have your lesson plans ready to go, that you have behavioral expectations ready to go, that your classroom runs smoothly, however smoothly it is for you. And then also wanting to see my students learn. I mean, because that's what we're here for. We're here to watch our students succeed. We want our students to succeed. So that's kind of my background for my 3 lesson plans. My lesson plans being on day 1 talking about the life cycle of a butterfly, on day 2 the life cycle of a frog, and then on day 3 talking about comparing and contrasting them, talking about the similarities and the differences between the life cycle of a frog and the life cycle of a butterfly.